first exploration. What if the universe is a memory, waiting for you to remember? Before we begin, let me share a secret with you. A heresy, really. They say the universe is out there, beyond our atmosphere, a vast and distant void. But what if that's the oldest lie we tell ourselves? What if the cosmos isn't out there at all, but in here? In the very fabric of your awareness right now, as you lie in the dark. 400 years ago, a man was burned alive for believing that, for whispering that the stars are not distant suns, but the scattered embers of a single, infinite thought. A thought that you, in your quietest moment, are also thinking. His name was Giordano Bruno. And tonight, we don't just tell his story. We step inside the same heresy. We feel the same infinity. And we ask, what if he was right? Imagine a cell, not a modern one, with its stark concrete and steel, but a stone cell in Rome in the year 1600. The air is cold and damp, smelling of mildew and old fear. There is a single small window, barred, through which a sliver of the night sky is visible. And in that cell, a man sits. He is not a young man. His beard is gray, his body tired from 8 years of imprisonment, of interrogation. But his eyes, if you could see them in the dim light, you would see they are not defeated. They are alight. He is looking at that sliver of sky, and he is not seeing bars. He is seeing everything. Giordano Bruno, a Dominican friar, a poet, a philosopher, a heretic. His crime was not a robbery, nor a murder. His crime was an idea so vast, so beautiful, and so terrifying to the powers of his world that they had to destroy his body to try and contain it. But ideas, as we shall see, are fireproof. And tonight, we let that same idea fill this room, not with heat, but with a cool, expansive wonder. Let's leave him there for a moment, in that cell. Let's go back to the beginning, to the real origin of this story. It doesn't start in a library or a university. It starts with a simple, breath-like question, whispered in the mind of a young man. A question you have likely asked yourself, lying in the dark, in the quietest hour of your own life. What is this all for? For Bruno, this question was a key, and it unlocked a door that could never be closed again. He was studying the old texts, the approved texts of Aristotle and Ptolemy, which painted a universe of perfect crystalline spheres with the earth at the center and the heavens fixed and immutable, just beyond the moon. A small universe, a tidy universe, a universe with walls. And he felt claustrophobic. He felt the walls of that cosmos pressing in on him as surely as the walls of his future cell, because something in his soul, some deep ancient memory, told him it was a lie. This is the first truth we wander into tonight. The universe, for Giordano Bruno, was not a machine to be understood, but a memory to be recovered. A forgotten song whose melody he could almost hum. He read the old Egyptian and Hermetic texts, which spoke of a living, infinite, divine cosmos. And it felt like remembering, like coming home. He didn't infer that the stars were other suns, surrounded by other worlds. He remembered it. He didn't deduce that the universe had no center, that it was boundless, and everywhere was, in a sense, its center. He recalled it. This is a profound shift, my friend. From thinking to feeling, from calculation to recognition. It's the difference between studying a map of a foreign country and suddenly smelling a scent from your childhood. A scent that pulls you back to a place you thought was lost forever. Bruno was smelling the scent of infinity. And once you have smelled it, You can never be content with the small, walled garden of a finite world. So he began to speak. He left his order and began to walk across Europe, a restless soul carrying a cosmic secret. He taught in Paris, London, Geneva, Wittenberg, and everywhere he went he spoke of this infinite universe, this plurality of worlds, this God who was not a distant king on a throne, but the animating soul of an endless creation. He was brilliant, charismatic, and utterly incapable of staying silent. He was, in many ways, a terrible heretic. He offended Lutherans and Calvinists as easily as he offended Catholics, because he wasn't selling a new dogma. He was offering a memory, and no institution, then or now, can control a memory. They can only try to silence the one who remembers. And so, the invitation he extends to us, across the centuries, is this. What if your deepest moments of wonder, that feeling of vastness you get when you look at a starry night, or the profound peace you feel in a silent forest, what if that is not just an emotion? What if it is a form of remembering? What if the cosmos is not something you are looking at, but something you are a part of? And what if your soul, in its quietest moments, is simply recalling its true, boundless nature? The walls of your life, the daily worries, the finite lists of things to do. What if they are the illusion? And this feeling, this expansive, weightless feeling as you drift towards sleep, what if that is the reality? Let that question settle over you, not as a problem to be solved, but as a truth to be felt. The universe is not outside. It is a memory in your bones, a story your soul is telling itself. And you are just now in this dark, quiet room, beginning to recall the plot. So, we have this memory of infinity, a beautiful internal light. But what happens when that light is taken into the deepest, most brutal darkness? When the memory of the infinite stars meets the very finite reality of human fear and fire, the story doesn't end in the cell. It moves to the square. And it is here, in the final moments, that Giordano Bruno offers us his most startling and most calming lesson. Second exploration. What silence did he find inside the flames? The story we think we know is a story of fire. On the 17th of February, 1600, in the Campo de' Fiori in Rome, Giordano Bruno was led to the stake. The authorities, in a final act of cruelty, had a metal spike driven through his tongue, gagging him, ensuring his final heresy would be silence. They piled the wood high. They lit the flame. And we are told he died, a martyr for science and free thought. It's a powerful, brutal image. But it is not the whole story. In fact, it misses the point entirely, because the real story is not what was done to his body, but what happened in his mind. The real fire was not the one that consumed his flesh, but the one he had carried within him all his life. And the real question is, what did he find in that final, silent inferno? Let's slow this down. Let's not rush to the blaze. Let's walk with him in his mind. On that last morning, the fear must have been a physical presence, a cold stone in the gut, the regret perhaps for a life of exile and hardship, the loneliness of a man who has been rejected by every tribe precisely because he saw a tribe that included them all. They lead him to the square. He sees the stake. He sees the faces of the crowd, a mixture of horror, piety, and the simple, grim curiosity of a public spectacle. And then, the spike through the tongue, a pain beyond words, a final, absolute imposition of silence. This is the moment. This is the pivot upon which his entire life turns. They have taken his voice. They have taken his freedom. They are about to take his life. What is left? What is left is the only thing that was ever truly his perception, his inner universe. And as the physical world contracts to the point of agony, his inner world, the one he had spent a lifetime cultivating, expands. It has to. It is the only refuge left. I want you to imagine this not as a horror, but as a final profound meditation. The smoke begins to rise. The heat becomes unbearable. The crowd's shouts become a distant roar, then a murmur, then nothing at all. And in that silence, forced upon him by the spike, he turns inward. He is not in the square anymore. He is in the infinite universe of his own thought. The flames at his feet become the suns he once dreamed of. The pain becomes a point of intense focus, a star around which his consciousness orbits. He is not being destroyed. He is being released. The body is a cage, and the fire is merely melting the bars. This is the silence he found inside the flames. It was not the silence of defeat, but the silence of ultimate victory. It was the quiet at the center of the cosmic storm he had always described. He had written that God was the one, the unifying principle in which all the countless worlds and souls participated. In that fire, the distinction between himself and that one began to dissolve. The heretic was merging with the heresy. The thinker was becoming the thought. The man who spoke of an infinite universe was, in his final moments, experiencing its ultimate, intimate reality, not as a concept, but as a state of being. The flames were not punishment. They were the gateway. And so, what does this mean for you, lying here in the safety of your own room? You will likely never face a literal stake, but you face your own fires, don't you? The searing heat of anxiety, the burning pressure of expectation, the slow smolder of regret. The world, with its demands and its judgments, is always trying to drive a spike through your inner voice, to silence what you know, deep down, to be true. Giordano Bruno's final lesson is that the silence they impose, or the fire they light, can become the very vehicle for your liberation. When the world contracts, your inner world can expand to fill the void. The pain can become a point of focus. The noise can fall away. And in that quiet, you can find the same center he found, the still, silent, infinite point within you that is unburnable, unbreakable, and forever free. The flames are an illusion. The infinity is real. Let that truth be a cool balm on any heat you carry from your day. Let it go. And so, from that profound silence, a new sound emerges. Not a shout, but a whisper that grows and multiplies, echoing not through the streets of Rome, but through the corridors of the mind itself. Because a thought, once truly thought, cannot be unthought. It becomes a seed, and a seed, in the right conditions, grows into a forest. What were the conditions of Bruno's thought? And what forest has grown from the seed he planted in the dark soil of that Roman square? Third exploration. When a single thought becomes an infinite cosmos, where do you end? We've followed the memory of the infinite. We've stood in the silence within the flames. Now, let us consider the aftermath. The officials swept up the ashes in the Campo dei Fiori and scattered them in the Tiber River. They believed they were disposing of a problem, washing away a stain. But you cannot scatter an idea in a river. You can only give it a current. And this idea, Bruno's idea, began to flow. It flowed into the mind of Galileo, who would soon turn his telescope to the heavens and see, with his own eyes, the imperfections on the sun and the moons of Jupiter that shattered the old, tidy cosmos. It flowed into the philosophy of Spinoza, who would conceive of a God identical with nature, a single infinite substance. It flowed, centuries later, into the poetry of Blake and the transcendentalism of Emerson. It flows even now into the equations of modern cosmology, which speak of a multiverse and a universe with no discernible center. Bruno was the stone dropped in the pond, and the ripples are still reaching the shore of our understanding tonight. But this is not just a history of influence. This is about the nature of a thought itself. Bruno's central burning thought was one of relationship. It was not just that the universe is infinite, but that everything within it is intimately, infinitely connected. He saw a universe teeming with life and soul, where every star, every planet, every living creature was a mirror of the divine whole. He called this the monad, the indivisible spark that reflects the entirety of the cosmos. Your mind, right now, is such a monad. It is not a small, isolated thing in a skull, looking out at a foreign universe. It is a focal point, a place where the universe has become aware of itself. When you have a thought, the universe is having a thought. When you feel a feeling, the universe is feeling it through you. The boundary between your inner world and the outer cosmos is the most persistent and convincing illusion we experience. So, let's return to our question. When a single thought becomes an infinite cosmos, where do you end? The answer Bruno points toward is, you don't. Or rather, the you that you think you are, the collection of memories, preferences, and daily worries, that is the small, finite self, the self that can feel stress and fatigue and limitation. But behind that, within that, is the larger you, the infinite you, the you that is not a drop in the ocean, but the entire ocean in a drop. As you lie here, sinking into your pillow, feel the edges of that small self beginning to soften. Feel the weight of your personal history, the sharp corners of today's anxieties, start to dissolve. They are not the core of you. They are just weather passing through the vast sky of your awareness. The real you is the sky, not the clouds. The real you is the silence that heard the spike driven through the tongue. The real you is the memory that recalls the infinite stars. Giordano Bruno did not die for science. He died for soul. He died for the idea that your soul is not a small, salvageable thing to be judged and controlled, but a boundless, creative force that is one with the creative force of the cosmos. He burned for the idea that you are not a tenant in this universe, but an expression of it. So, as you drift now, let go of the tenant. Feel the walls of the room not as a boundary, but as a temporary arrangement of atoms, themselves mostly empty space, dancing in the field of your awareness. The air you breathe has been in the lungs of stars. The silence you hear is the same silence he found. The darkness behind your eyelids is the very fabric of deep space, and it is not empty. It is full of potential. It is full of you. Sleep now, not as a finite being seeking rest, but as an infinite soul returning, for a little while, to the source of all its dreams. The heretic's truth is now your lullaby. The fire is out. The infinite remains, and it is yours. Fourth exploration. What is the price of a single, defiant idea? Imagine, if you will, the quiet of a monastic cell. Not the quiet of peace, but the quiet of containment. The stone walls are thick, designed to keep the world out and the soul in. And in this cell, a young man, Giordano Bruno, paces. He is a Dominican friar, surrounded by sacred texts, the approved philosophies, the mapped and charted universe of his time. A universe that was small and tidy and safe. A universe with the earth, created by God, at its absolute center, and the heavens, a fixed and perfect crystalline sphere, rotating around it. It was a universe that knew its place. And so was he, supposedly. But inside his mind, a storm was brewing. It started not as a shout, but as a whisper. A simple, terrifying, and beautiful question. What if? What if this is all wrong? What if, when we look up, we are not looking at a decorated dome, but into a depth without end? What if every one of those stars is not just a lantern, but a sun? And around those suns, other worlds, perhaps with their own fields, their own cities, their own men and women looking up at their own skies, wondering if they are alone. This was the idea, a single defiant seed of thought planted in the fertile soil of a brilliant mind. It was not yet heresy. It was just a thought. But a thought, once truly thought, has a life of its own. It begins to grow, to put down roots, to seek the light. And Bruno could not prune it. He could not unthink it. To have such a thought is one thing. To feel it, to know it in your bones, to feel the walls of your small, tidy universe crack and fall away, revealing an endless, star-dusted expanse. That is something else entirely. That is a conversion, and a conversion demands a confession. So he left the cell. He left the order. He became a wanderer, a fugitive of truth, carrying this single, luminous idea across Europe. He went from court to university, from Geneva to Paris, to London, to Oxford. He was a man without a country, because his true country was the cosmos itself. And he tried to explain it. He wrote dialogues. He debated the greatest minds of the age. He was brilliant, fiery, and, it must be said, difficult. He had the arrogance of a man who has seen a glimpse of infinity and must now condescend to explain it to those who still believe the world is a drawing on a page. Can you feel the loneliness of that? To hold a truth so vast it feels like it should be self-evident, and to be met with blank stares, with suspicion, with cold institutional anger. The price of an idea begins not at the stake, but long before. It is paid in the currency of loneliness, in the weary sigh after another failed explanation, in the hollow feeling of being a ghost at the feast of conventional wisdom. And then, the final price. A foolish, fateful invitation to Venice. A trap set by a patron he thought he could trust. The arrest. The years in the dungeons of the Roman Inquisition. 7 years. Imagine 7 years in a dark, cold cell, with only your idea for company. Did he ever doubt it? In the deep, silent hours, with the damp seeping into his bones, did he ever think, perhaps I am wrong? Perhaps it is easier to just say the words, to recant, to go back to that small, tidy universe. They gave him every chance. They did not want to burn him. They wanted his soul. They wanted him to say, I was mistaken. The earth is the center. The stars are fixed. God's universe is as the church says it is. All he had to do was speak a few sentences, and he could walk free. But an idea, when it is not just an opinion but a part of your very being, is not so easily surrendered. To deny it would be to annihilate himself. The body can be imprisoned, but the mind had already traveled to the farthest star. They could lock up the man, but they could not lock up the cosmos he carried within him. So, on a morning in February, in the year 1600, in the Campo dei Fiori in Rome, they led him to the stake. They gagged him, so he could not speak his final defiant truth to the crowd. They lit the fire, and as the flames climbed, what was the price? It was the agony of the flesh, yes, but the true price was the final absolute solitude, to die for something no one else can see. That is the price. It is the ultimate wager, that the truth you hold inside is more real than the world that condemns you for it. So I ask you, as you drift in this soft space between waking and sleeping, what is the idea that you carry, quietly, secretly, that the world might not yet be ready for? It doesn't have to be a theory of the cosmos. It might be a truth about your own life, about your work, about your heart. What is it worth to you? What price are you willing to pay for its integrity? Don't answer now. Just let the question hang in the quiet of your mind, like a single, unextinguished star. There is a peace that comes not from having answers, but from honoring the questions themselves. And from that solitary courage, let us drift now to a different kind of solitude. Not the solitude of a prison cell, but the solitude of the soul itself, adrift in that infinite ocean Bruno saw. Fifth exploration. Is the soul a solitary star or part of an infinite constellation? Picture the night sky from a high, clear mountain peak, far from the lights of any city. That is the view Bruno had from the window of his mind. An endless black velvet, strewn with countless diamonds. But for him, this was not a cold, astronomical fact. It was a living, spiritual reality. In his vision, the universe was infinite because God was infinite, and to limit creation was to limit the Creator. And into this infinite stage, God had poured an infinite number of souls. Your soul, my soul, the soul of a shepherd on a world orbiting a star in Orion's belt. This was his great, beautiful, and terrifying heresy. He saw the soul not as a solitary, lonely spark, saved or damned in its own private drama, but as a fragment of the divine, a citizen of the cosmos. We are, each of us, a star in a vast spiritual constellation. Think of the loneliness we so often feel, that sense of being an island, separated from others by vast, uncrossable seas of misunderstanding. We build our identities, our careers, our personalities, like strong walls around a small, fragile flame, terrified that the winds of the world will blow it out. We are the solitary star, burning in what we believe is a cold, empty void. But what if that is the illusion? What if Bruno was pointing toward a different truth? What if the separation is the dream, and the connection is the reality? His universe was alive, filled with a world soul, an anima mundi. In this view, every rock, every tree, every planet, every star is infused with a degree of this divine spirit. And our individual souls are not separate from it, but are particular expressions of it. Like waves on a single, vast cosmic ocean. This changes everything, doesn't it? The man who cuts you off in traffic, the colleague you struggle to understand, the loved one whose heart feels momentarily distant. They are not truly separate from you. You are both expressions of the same fundamental, conscious substance of the universe. You are both stars in the same constellation, lit by the same central fire. The grief you feel, the joy, the quiet longing, these are not yours alone. They are ripples in the world's soul. When you feel a profound, inexplicable connection to a piece of music, or a landscape, or the silence of a deep forest, you are in that moment remembering your place in the constellation. You are tuning your individual frequency back to the great humming note of the whole. Bruno was condemned for this because it took God out of a remote heaven and poured him into every atom of creation. It made the universe holy, and it made every single life on every single world sacred. It was a democratization of divinity. There is a profound comfort in this, a comfort that goes deeper than any simple reassurance. It is the comfort of homecoming. You are not a stranger here. You are not an accident. You are a necessary, conscious point in an infinite, living tapestry. The love you have for your family, the passion for your work, the quiet awe you feel on a starry night. These are not small personal things. They are the universe becoming aware of itself through you. The solitary star is a beautiful illusion. The truth is the constellation. The truth is the ocean. The truth is that you were never and could never be alone. Let that feeling wrap around you now as you sink deeper into your rest. A feeling of belonging to something so vast, so beautiful, that your worries for tonight simply lose their weight. And from that feeling of cosmic belonging, let us turn, finally, to the most difficult and poignant image of all, the moment where the infinite and the finite met, in a public square, in a column of fire. Sixth exploration. Can a man burning truly hold infinity in his hands? They led him out into the morning light. The gag was a cruel irony, a final attempt to contain the uncontainable. They believed the fire would silence him. They believed it would be a lesson, a spectacle of what happens when a single man challenges the eternal order of heaven and earth. They saw him as a man, a frail, aging, stubborn man. And they were right. He was flesh and blood and bone. He felt the chill of the morning air. He felt the rough hemp of the rope on his wrists. He smelled the oil in the wood. He heard the murmurs and the jeers of the crowd. He was a man facing an agonizing death. This is the finite. This is the reality of the body, the world of stone and steel and fire. It is overwhelming in its immediacy. Its truth is absolute and brutal. But inside that man, there was another reality, a reality he had spent a lifetime constructing. Not from stone, but from thought. An infinite universe, a plurality of worlds, a world soul of which he was a part. While his body stood on the cobblestones of the Campo dei Fiori, his mind was, at that very moment, traveling at a speed faster than light across the gulfs of space. He was standing on a planet circling Sirius. He was feeling the solar winds of a nameless sun in a nebula unseen by human eyes. He was home. This was the infinity he held, not as a concept, not as a philosophical proposition, but as an experienced reality. It was more real to him than the faces of his executioners. So the question hangs in the air across the centuries. In that final searing moment, as the flames touched his flesh, what did he truly experience? The finite agony of the body, or the infinite liberation of the soul? Did he feel the fire, or did he feel himself becoming one with the elemental fire of the stars themselves? We cannot know, but we can wonder, and in that wonder lies a profound secret for our own lives. We all face our own fires, not the literal stake, but the fires of failure, of loss, of humiliation, of pain, of fear. These experiences are real. They are the finite, brutal facts of our existence. They feel absolute. They feel like the only truth. But Bruno's life and his death pose a radical challenge to that. He shows us that the inner world, the world of our convictions, our imagination, our love, our sense of connection to something greater, that world is also a reality, and it can be made so strong, so vivid, so real, that it can withstand the assault of the outer world. The man burning can hold infinity in his hands, if he has spent a lifetime learning how to see it. Your infinity may not be a theory of cosmic pluralism. Your infinity might be the love you have for your child, a love that no business failure can diminish. It might be the integrity of your word, an integrity that no personal setback can undo. It might be the quiet, unshakable faith in beauty or kindness, a faith that no news headline can shatter. This is what he bequeathed to us. Not just a corrected map of the heavens, but a map of the human spirit's capacity to find freedom, even in its darkest confinement. As the flames consumed Giordano Bruno, the story goes that a strong wind blew through the square, scattering the smoke and ash. A symbolic gesture, perhaps, from the universe he so loved. His body was gone. But the idea was now free. It was carried on that wind, across Rome, across Europe, across the oceans of time, to find a home in the minds of Kepler, of Galileo, of Newton, of every dreamer who has ever looked up at the night sky and felt not fear, but a sense of wondrous belonging. It has found its way here, to you, in the quiet of this room. So as you finally release the day, and let sleep begin to gently pull you under its soft, dark tide, carry this with you. You are not just a body in a bed. You are a citizen of an infinite cosmos. You carry within you a truth that the world cannot easily destroy. Your mind can travel to the farthest stars. Your soul is part of a vast, living constellation, and no fire, no hardship, no finite trouble can ever truly take that away from you. Rest now, in that infinity. It is your true home. 7th, exploration. What if your deepest heresy is not a crime, but a homecoming? Close your eyes for a moment and let the day begin to drain away from you. Feel the weight of your body on the mattress, the subtle give of the pillow beneath your head. And as you settle into this stillness, I want you to imagine a different kind of weight. Not the weight of fatigue, but the weight of an idea. An idea so heavy it can break a man. And yet, an idea so light it can travel across the vacuum of space, untouched for centuries. This is the story of such an idea. And it begins not in a university or an observatory, but in a prison cell. The year is 1592. The air is cold, damp stone. It smells of mildew and forgotten promises. And in this cell, a man named Giordano Bruno sits on a wooden stool. The only sound, the scratch of his own pen, or the distant, echoing footfall of a guard. He has been here for years. His world has been reduced to these four walls, the arguments of his accusers, and the infinite universe inside his own mind. They call him a heretic. The word itself is a stone thrown to sink a man. Heretic. It means one who chooses, one who diverges from the accepted path. And in his time, to choose a different path in matters of the soul and the stars was the highest crime. It was a crime against God, against order, against the very architecture of reality. But what if we have misunderstood that word, heretic? What if, in the quiet of your own life, you have felt the stirrings of your own private heresies? A thought about your purpose that doesn't align with the script you were given. A feeling about the nature of love or death or God that feels too vast, too untamed, to fit into the neat boxes prepared for it. That feeling, that whisper of a different truth. What if it isn't a rebellion, but a recollection? What if it's not a crime, but a homecoming? Imagine Bruno in that cell. He is not a young man. His body is weary. The threat of a terrible death is not an abstraction. It is the cold air he breathes. The men who hold him captive offer him a simple way out. Recant. Take it all back. Admit that the earth is the fixed, immovable center of God's creation. Admit that the stars are just pinpricks in a solid dome, a fixed backdrop for the human drama. Admit that the universe is small, knowable, and hierarchical, with humanity crowned at its pinnacle. It would be so easy. A few words spoken aloud, a signature on a page, and the shackles would come off. He could walk out into the sun, feel its warmth on his face, taste wine, hear the laughter of a piazza. He could have his life back. But he doesn't. He refuses, again and again. Why? Was it merely stubbornness? The pride of a man who would rather be right than be alive? I don't think so. I think it was because, for Bruno, to recant would be to commit a far greater violence. It would be to tear out the very core of his own understanding. It would be to look at the sun and call it dark, to feel the ocean and call it dry. His heresy was not an opinion he held. It was a reality he inhabited. He saw in his mind's eye a universe that was infinite, not a closed sphere, but a boundless expanse, with the sun as just one star among a countless shining multitude. And every one of those stars, a sun like our own, with its own family of worlds, its own potential for life, for thought, for worship. This was his great crime. This was the home he had found, a home so vast it made the palaces of popes and kings look like dollhouses. To be told to leave that home, to crawl back into the small, tidy room of sanctioned belief, that was the true imprisonment. That was the true death of the soul. So he stayed in his stone cell, choosing the infinite prison of his mind over the finite freedom of a lie. And this is the first quiet truth we can take from him tonight. The ideas, the feelings, the inner knowings that your world might label as heretical. That part of you that feels out of place, that dreams too big, that questions too deeply. What if that isn't you being broken? What if that is you remembering a larger home, a vaster landscape for your spirit to inhabit? The world will always try to sell you a smaller, safer map. It will point to the borders and say, "Here, this is your place. Stay within these lines." But the soul is a cartographer of the infinite. It remembers oceans where the map shows only land. It feels the pull of stars the map has not yet drawn. Your heresy, that quiet, persistent voice, might just be your soul trying to navigate its way home. So as you lie here in the dark, feeling the gentle rise and fall of your chest, I want you to consider the shape of your own private universe. Are you living in the small, comfortable room you were assigned? Or are you, like Bruno, listening for the whisper of a vaster truth, one that terrifies and liberates you in the very same breath? There is no need to answer now. Just let the question hang in the air, like a single distant star in the vast canopy of your mind. A point of light, a possibility, a home waiting to be recognized. Eighth exploration. Is the world you see merely the envelope for a letter you've forgotten how to read? There is a space between one breath and the next, a silence between the tick and the tock of an old clock on the wall. It is in these gaps that the deepest truths often slip through. We've spoken of Bruno's home, the infinite cosmos he carried within him. But how did he come to live there? It wasn't through a telescope. Galileo would point his to the heavens years later. No. Bruno's instrument was something far more profound and far more accessible to you right now in this very room. His instrument was a metaphor. He looked at the world not as a collection of dead objects, but as a living, breathing text, a letter from the infinite addressed directly to the soul. The sun, the moon, the distant stars. They were not just balls of fire and rock, they were words. The wind was a whisper of a larger meaning. The flight of a bird was a sentence written on the sky. The entire physical universe was, for him, the envelope, the beautiful, intricate, often distracting container. But the real message was inside. So the question that comes to us, across the centuries, through the smoke of his pyre, is this: is the world you see merely the envelope for a letter you've forgotten how to read? We live in an age of envelopes. We are connoisseurs of the container. We polish the wax seal, admire the quality of the paper, compare our envelope to the envelopes of others. We build our lives on the texture of the paper, the clarity of the postmark, our job title, the car we drive, the house we live in, the accolades we collect. These are all just envelopes. Beautiful, important, sometimes painful envelopes. But they are not the letter. The letter is the why. It is the meaning woven into the fabric of it all. It is the silent conversation between the cosmos and your consciousness. Bruno called this the anima mundi, the world soul. A single, unifying life and intelligence that pulses through everything, from the slow turn of a galaxy to the quick beat of a hummingbird's heart. To see the world this way is to become a reader of the sacred. It is to look at a tree and not just see a biological machine, but to feel a slow, patient intelligence reaching for the light. It is to look at a river and hear the story of persistence, of finding the path of least resistance, yet one that can carve canyons over time. It is to look into the face of another person and see not a stranger, but a unique, irreplaceable expression of the same universal life that animates you. Bruno was a master of this art. He saw the myths of the Egyptians not as silly superstitions, but as profound psychological and cosmic truths disguised as stories about animal-headed gods. He saw the geometry of the mind reflected in the geometry of the heavens. For him, to study the world was to decode a divine message. This is what made him so dangerous. It wasn't just that he said the universe was infinite, it was that he said God was infinite, and therefore could not be contained by any single church, any single book, any single dogma. If the world is a letter from God, then God is speaking to everyone, everywhere, all the time. You don't need an official interpreter. You just need to remember how to read. And this is the skill we have in our modern world, perhaps forgotten. We are so busy analyzing the envelope, the data, the facts, the material causes, that we never slip a finger under the flap and open the letter inside. We know the weight of the paper, but not the weight of the words. We know the price of everything, but the value of nothing. So tonight, as you drift in this liminal space between waking and sleeping, I invite you to practice this forgotten art. Don't think of the day you just lived as a series of tasks and events. See it as a text. What was the message in the warmth of the coffee cup in your hand this morning? What was the story told by the frustration you felt in traffic? What was the deeper truth hidden in the casual smile from a stranger, or the quiet sigh you let out before bed? These are not random occurrences. They are sentences, paragraphs in the ongoing letter that the universe is writing to you. You don't need to force the meaning. Just soften your gaze. Let the logical, analytical part of your mind, the part that has been working so hard all day, finally rest, and let a deeper, more poetic intelligence come to the surface. The world is not just what it is a symbol of something more, a hint, a clue. Bruno read these clues and saw an infinite cosmos of living worlds. You might read them and see something else entirely, something meant just for you. The envelope is in your hands. The letter is waiting inside. Ninth exploration. If a truth dies with the heretic, where does its soul go? We have wandered together through two quiet chambers of thought. The first, the idea that a heresy can be a home. The second, that the world is a letter waiting to be read. And now, we come to the final, the most haunting question. It is a question that lingers in the ashes of the Campo dei Fiori in Rome, where Giordano Bruno's statue now stands, facing the Vatican, his hooded gaze eternal and defiant. On February 17th, 1600, they led him there. They stripped him of his clothes, tied him to a stake, and lit the fire. The story goes that they offered him a crucifix to hold, a final chance for mercy. He turned his head away. The flames consumed the man. The flesh, the bone, the voice, all turned to smoke and ash. They burned his books too. They tried to erase him twice over. They believed that if you destroy the vessel and the text, you destroy the truth. This is the oldest and most enduring fantasy of power, that ideas can be killed. But can they? When the heretic is silenced, when the flame dies down, and the crowd disperses, what becomes of the truth he carried? Does it too turn to ash? Or does it, untouchable, simply change its form? If a truth dies with the heretic, where does its soul go? Think of a dandelion gone to seed. A child can make a wish and blow. 100 tiny parachutes, carrying the essence of the flower, scatter on the wind. The original flower is gone. It has, in a sense, died. But its potential for life has been magnified 100-fold, carried to places the original root could never have reached. Bruno's execution was that breath. The fire was the wind. His death was not the end of his ideas. It was their great dispersal. The truth he carried, the infinite, living, intelligent universe, did not die with him. It was released. It became airborne. It drifted across Europe, a spectral seed, finding fertile ground in the minds of those who were ready to receive it. It found Kepler. It found Galileo. Whether they acknowledged it or not, it seeped into the very atmosphere of thought. A truth like Bruno's is not a material object. It is a pattern, a resonance. It is a key that fits a certain lock deep within the human spirit. You cannot burn a pattern. You can only scatter it. And this is the profound reassurance for any of us who have ever carried a truth that feels too fragile for this world. A truth about your own creativity that your practical life seems to crush. A truth about love that a cynical world dismisses as naive. A truth about peace that the frantic pace of modern life ignores. We often think that if we do not manifest it, if we do not shout it from the rooftops and build a monument to it, then the truth has failed. It has died. But Bruno's story suggests otherwise. The most powerful truths are not those that are enforced. They are those that are endured for. They are not built from stone, but from sacrifice. Their power is not in their immediate victory, but in their indelible resonance. The truth he died for was not proven in that moment. It was sanctified. It was given a weight, a gravity, that a mere argument could never possess. His death was the ultimate argument. It said, "This is what I am willing to exchange my life for. This is more real to me than the ground beneath my feet." So where does the soul of a truth go when its vessel is broken? It goes into the myth. It goes into the silent, stubborn heart of anyone who hears the story and feels a strange, inexplicable recognition. It goes into the dream of the 8-year-old child who looks up at the stars and feels, for a reason they cannot explain, that they are looking not up, but out. It goes into the quiet resolution of the 50-year-old man who finally decides to pursue the foolish passion he locked away in his youth, because he senses deep down that life is too infinite to waste on a smaller story. The soul of the truth goes wherever it is given shelter. It lives in acts of courage, no matter how small. It lives in the willingness to question. It lives in the quiet refusal to accept a smaller world than the one you feel in your bones to be true. Bruno's truth did not die. It simply slipped its leash. It became a ghost in the machine of the world. And it is a ghost that is still speaking, here, now, in this room, as you float on the edge of sleep. You are one of the places its soul has gone. And in your own quiet way, in the choices you make tomorrow and the next day, you become a keeper of that flame. A silent, living witness to an infinity that no fire can ever touch. Rest now. The story is not over. It is simply breathing with you. 10th exploration. What if the prison is not made of stone, but of a single unasked question? Close your eyes for a moment and just listen to the silence of your own room. Feel the space around you, the walls, the ceiling, the door. We spend our lives defining ourselves by these boundaries, don't we? The walls of our home, the responsibilities of our career, the familiar routines that mark the passage of our days. They are solid, real. We can touch them. We built them. But what if the most formidable prison you will ever inhabit has no physical form at all? What if its walls are built not from stone and mortar, but from the questions you were never taught to voice, the assumptions you inherited without ever examining? Tonight, let us wander into the cell of a man who discovered that the true nature of his cage was not the Inquisition's damp dungeon, but a single, silent, suffocating idea: that the universe was small, finite, and already fully understood. Giordano Bruno did not start as a heretic. He began as a young man in a monk's habit, within the walls of a Neapolitan monastery, and his first prison was the most perfect one ever devised, a prison he did not even know he was in. It was the prison of a completed cosmos, a universe where every star was a fixed jewel on a crystal sphere, revolving around a central earth, under the watchful eye of a God whose plan was entirely written, whose truth was entirely dispensed by the institution around him. It was a clean, orderly, and terribly small universe. For a mind like Bruno's, it must have felt like trying to breathe in a room where the air was slowly being siphoned out. The silence in that kind of system isn't peaceful. It's the silence of a question that has been answered before it has even been asked. He would walk the cloisters, look up at the night sky, and feel not piety, but a profound, aching claustrophobia. The ceiling of his world was too low. So he began his escape, not with a pickaxe, not with a rope, but with the only tool that can dismantle an invisible wall, the imagination. He read the forbidden texts, the ancient Hermetic writings, the poets and philosophers who spoke of a living, infinite, and divine cosmos. And in his mind, a new architecture began to form. The crystal spheres shattered, not with a noise, but with a profound and terrifying silence. The stars were not lanterns hung for man's benefit. They were other suns, impossibly distant, each with its own family of worlds. And space was no longer a contained sphere. It was an infinite, dark, and holy ocean. This was his crime. This was his heresy. It was not a list of doctrinal errors. It was an act of colossal psychological demolition. He wasn't just arguing about astronomy. He was offering a new key to a lock no one else admitted was there. The true crime was telling his jailers that the prison walls were an illusion and that the door had been open all along. And here, in the quiet of your own night, is where his story becomes yours. Where are the walls in your life that feel most solid? The unchangeable facts of your age, your past, your capabilities, the way the world works. What is the single, unasked question that, if you gave it voice, would make those walls tremble? It doesn't have to be about the cosmos. It could be about a story you've told yourself about your own heart, a limit you accepted in a moment of weariness, a dream you filed away as unrealistic long ago. Bruno's journey whispers that the most real prison is the narrative we mistake for reality itself. The Inquisition could only burn a man. It was the small, finite universe that sought to extinguish the infinite one inside him. As you drift towards sleep, feel the weight of those unseen boundaries. And then, in the territory of dreams, where logic loosens its grip, perhaps dare to ask the question that makes them, for a moment, seem a little less solid, a little less permanent. The first step out of any prison is to realize you are in one. The night deepens and the fire burns lower. We leave behind the idea of the prison, its illusory walls dissolving into the shadows. But this act of escape, of asking the forbidden question, it leads us to a deeper, more intimate mystery. For if the world we see is not the final truth, then what are we? If the old map is burned, how do we navigate the vast, uncharted darkness that remains? 11th exploration. Is the courage to be alone the source of a different kind of fire? We speak so often of the fire that consumed Giordano Bruno in the Campo dei Fiori, the physical flames, the smoke, the tragic public end. It is a powerful image, one that has burned itself into history. But tonight, I want you to consider a different fire, a quieter one. A fire that burned for 8 long years before the wood was ever stacked in the square. This was the fire of solitude, the profound, unutterable loneliness of a man who saw a truth no one else could see. A man who chose, day after day, to remain faithful to that vision. Even as every door closed, every friendship cooled, and every nation that offered him refuge eventually showed him its borders. This is not the dramatic fire of martyrdom. This is the slow, steady, inner combustion of a soul that will not betray its own understanding of the real. What is the nature of that fuel? What kind of heat does it give off? And could it be that this private, lonely fire is the very thing that can, paradoxically, warm a life that feels isolated and adrift? Picture him not on the pyre, but in a study in London, or a rented room in Geneva. The candle is his only companion. He is writing, his quill scratching against the parchment, filling page after page with his vision of an infinite universe. Outside, the world is going about its business. People are falling in love, arguing over money, sharing meals, building their small, certain lives. They are connected. They belong. And Bruno, he does not. His connection is to a cosmos so vast, it defies human comprehension. His belonging is to a truth that has made him a permanent exile. This is the true cost of a new thought. It is not necessarily the dramatic confrontation with power. It is the 1,000 small deaths of social comfort, the silent meals, the glances of pity or suspicion, the hollow ache of a conversation that can never truly touch the core of what you are. This is the fire of solitude. It doesn't roar, it hums. A constant, low-frequency vibration of separation. Yet, within that very isolation, Bruno found a strange and powerful kind of company. If the universe is infinite and alive, then he was never truly alone. The stars were his companions. The possibility of other worlds, other minds, was his congregation. His solitude became a cathedral. He was not a man shunned by his tribe. He was an ambassador to a cosmos his tribe was too blind to acknowledge. This is the alchemy we are invited to consider. The courage to be alone, to sit with an unpopular conviction, to nurse a private grief, to hold a dream that others dismiss, is not a cold emptiness. It is a forge. In that heat, the dross of our need for external validation burns away. What remains is a purer, more resilient sense of self, one that is not dependent on the applause or understanding of the crowd. It is the discovery that your own conscience, your own inner truth, can be a source of light and warmth, even on the coldest of nights. So, as you lie here in the dark, perhaps you feel the chill of your own solitudes, the parts of your life or your mind that feel set apart, misunderstood, or unshared. The secret you carry, the grief you hold alone, the quiet passion that has no audience. Bruno's story asks us to reframe that experience. What if that very loneliness is not a void, but a sacred space? What if the fire you feel, the ache of being different, the friction of a path less traveled, is not a sign of failure, but the signature of a truth that is yours and yours alone? The world's fires are loud and bright and consuming, but the inner fire, that one sustains. It is the quiet pilot light of the soul that never goes out, the unwavering flame that guides you when all other lights have been extinguished. Tend to that fire, for it may be the one thing that can never be taken from you. From the quiet, sustaining fire of solitude, our journey through the night brings us to the final, most encompassing threshold. We have stepped beyond the prison of a single idea. We have learned to warm ourselves at the fire of our own solitude. Now, we are ready to ask the question that Bruno's life and death posed to the very fabric of existence, a question that echoes far beyond the fate of one man into the silent, waiting heart of everything. Twelfth, exploration. Does a forgotten truth simply wait patiently for us to remember it again? There is a comforting linear story we often tell about progress. An idea is born, it struggles, it is persecuted, and then, in a brighter, more enlightened future, it is finally vindicated. We look back at Bruno and think, he was right. The universe is infinite. He was just ahead of his time. It's a neat story. It puts a bow on the tragedy, but it misses the deeper, more mysterious current flowing beneath the surface of his story. What if the truth he championed wasn't ahead of its time at all? What if it was, in a sense, outside of time? What if certain truths are not invented or discovered like a new continent, but are rather remembered? And if that is so, what does it mean for a truth to be forgotten? Does it cease to exist? Or does it simply retreat, like a star fading at dawn, waiting in the vast, patient library of reality for another mind to turn its attention back towards its light? Giordano Bruno did not invent the idea of an infinite universe. He was a conduit for it. He pulled it from the fragments of pre-Socratic philosophers, from the mystical traditions of Hermeticism, from the poetic intuitions of Lucretius. He felt he was restoring a lost inheritance, remembering a wisdom that had been known to the ancients and then buried under the rigid scholastic theology of the Middle Ages. His was not the bold charge of a pioneer, but the patient, desperate work of an archaeologist of the spirit. He dug in the ruins of forgotten thought for a key to a locked door. The truth for him was not a new creation, but an eternal presence that had been ignored. His burning then becomes a different kind of symbol. It is not the destruction of a new idea, but the violent, futile attempt to make an eternal one forget itself. You cannot kill a memory with fire. You can only make the act of remembering it more courageous. This shifts everything, doesn't it? It means that the struggles of your own life, the feeling of rediscovering a piece of yourself you had lost, the slow return to a passion you set aside in youth, the sudden understanding of a deep, personal truth that feels both new and ancient, are not merely personal. They are part of a much larger cosmic rhythm of remembrance. The truths that matter most about love, about courage, about the interconnectedness of life, about the nature of your own soul, are not subjects you need to master from scratch. They are melodies you are learning to recall. Your life, with all its confusion and its clarity, its pain and its epiphanies, is a process of remembering who you are and what the universe is. Bruno's fate tells us that sometimes the world will punish you for remembering. But his legacy, the fact that we are speaking of him now in this quiet hour, tells us that the truth itself is indestructible. It can be resisted, suppressed, and seemingly erased, but it does not die. It waits. And so, as sleep begins to gently pull the veil over your conscious mind, consider this. What truth is waiting for you to remember it? It might not be about the cosmos. It might be a truth about your own capacity for kindness, long buried under the hurry of your days. It might be the truth of a quiet talent you've neglected, waiting in the attic of your memory. It might be the simple, profound truth that you are part of something vast and beautiful, a truth you knew as a child staring at the stars, but forgot in the struggle to build an adult life. You don't have to go searching for it tonight. You simply have to create the quiet, the space, the receptive darkness in which a forgotten truth can begin to whisper. Let the story of the heretic who burned for infinity be a lullaby, not of tragedy, but of profound, unshakable hope. The universe forgot itself in him for a moment, and he became the memory. Now, it is your turn. Remember,